At this point, unless there's an absolute burning question, I suggest we get into groups and talk to one another. And our great speakers have set the stage for us for our 4 working groups. So we've heard a lot about the fact that we desperately need evidence. And so the research group is going to meet over in this corner. And the we definitely need evidence. So there's our research group. Our policy dimension, I find, is extremely important. And we've asked Olu and friends to lead that session. And policy is going to be in this corner where the blue card is. We haven't heard enough yet about the markets. Ellen's introduced the fact that these integrated systems can really give us some proof of purchase by the consumer segment. But John Fay and Dyburn are going to lead a discussion on the markets. How do we jumpstart with climate finance, etc. And that'll be back in the corner with the pink card. And finally, Dennis will be talking, or not talking, maybe you've heard from him. He's going to be leading the discussion on a campaign. And I have to say, capacity development came up in all 4, and I consider it cross-cutting. So I do hope you'll touch on capacity development as it's associated with the 4 topic areas. So you can't have a workshop without moving furniture. And so can I ask our leads to direct furniture moving into a circle around these 4 spots? And I'm going to bring you the materials you need to work with, and we'll take 15 minutes to get some key messages.
My name is Ivan. I work for the Research and Evidence Division in the Department for International Development in the UK. Trying to summarize this kind of very rich list of things is difficult, but I thought I had 3 kind of core areas. One of them concerns actually the kinds of research. What types of research do we need to do? And one thing that came out of that was research on how research can actually help scaling up. So research on research was something. The use of randomized control trials as a more robust manner of testing things, and the amplification of long-term research to try and measure change. So that was an interesting first point, I thought, on research approaches. Second one, of course, is much more evidence on the multiple benefits from this type of agriculture, to do with carbon sequestration, to do with productivity, of course, to do with costs and benefits to the producers, to do with food security, biodiversity, and adaptation benefits. A third point that was made, that was very important, is the point of granularity. There is no panacea in this thing, so therefore people need very specific guidance for their particular circumstances, their particular agricultural zones. Thank you, that's my summary from this group.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Salvaraja Jaffrey, formerly of ICRAF, but now with Greening. We talked about campaign. One of the first points was that we need to align national policy towards supporting evergreen agriculture. Secondly, we talked about how important branding is, in that we need to use the right terminology. For example, we've been calling it agroforestry for the longest time, but when we switched it to evergreen agriculture, that has seemed to have so much more buy-in. So somehow we need to work with communication strategists and see how best to package the message. So that was the second point. Still on branding, that it needs, we need to make it easy to recognize the message. The message needs to be supported by governments, and we have to get the message out into mass media. For example, maybe in rural Kenya, what would work best would be radio. And we have examples of that from other countries like Thailand as well. We need to define the purpose of evergreen agriculture so that that can be included in strategy, and then we go on to create more public awareness. Another key point is that NAMA programs are the new window for international support to developing countries for actions that have mitigation outcomes.
So from the markets group, I'll try to sum up what we talked about as quickly as possible. What we have realized is that markets aren't necessarily working for the smallholder farmer, certainly not the carbon markets. So there's a disconnect between what investors, particularly commercial investors, would typically take on as a risk profile with the long term and the risks associated with smallholder farmers and what's needed to actually galvanize and deploy these on a large scale. So some of the types of things that we discussed were what's needed is maybe the carbon markets aren't what's needed for this. Maybe we need something a bit more holistic, either it be diverting the subsidies that are provided to commercial funding into something a bit more focused on the smallholder farmers. Some of the other things we talked about, we heard about a program where they're doing it more on the tree side as opposed to just the carbon side. We need to, in order to make this work, the monitoring, reporting, and verification is extremely difficult. So maybe we need to reduce baselines if we decide that we do stick with the carbon markets for it, if there does become a demand for these types of credits in a likely long-term price signal. But I think so the main things that we did, just as a quick sum up, is that there's a huge need for seed money, but not just seed money, ongoing, long-term, not typical donor 3 to 5 year thinking, but 10 to 20 year thinking on the support necessary and the continued follow-up to make these necessary behavior changes and give the farmer what they need as in training and inputs in order to increase their productivity, which is the end goal is productivity, not necessarily the other benefits from it can be many other things, but the yield increases is what's necessary and on a sustainable basis. So I think that we need to rethink in general, and the common theme I think from our discussion was that the carbon markets don't seem to work for this. So how do we change the way we're thinking about the smallholder to actually provide the support necessary to increase yields in a sustainable manner? Thanks.
I think the major problem we're trying to address is how to get a buy-in by policymakers that climate-smart agriculture is the way to address food security and poverty. So, number one, we are saying that, excuse me, we need to win the economic argument that evergreen agriculture is a low-cost and high-return option. We need to have data evidence. That's what we said. Two is there is a need to invest in extension systems that can support climate-smart agriculture with the required knowledge. We only had three. The third one is enhanced collaboration between all relevant ministries, agriculture, forestry, water, etc. I think it's also to put in place a good coordination capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can see these are in some ways seamless conversations because they're all interrelated. At this point, can I give you a round of applause for the work you've done? And invite Dr. Abbas to come and close this out and invite us to move this conversation to Niger.
Thank you, Constance, for giving me this opportunity to give some closing remark. What we can have in mind for the key message: one, various success stories have to be scaled up that come about by catalyzing the movement and to build a strategic action. Second, the need for more data and information on evergreen agriculture. So, as what the research aspect discussed and policy aspect discussed, we see that we need more data and information on evergreen agriculture. Three, we need to develop more approaches and strategy for mainstreaming evergreen agriculture in national, regional, and international agenda and processes. When the guy from Malawi gave us a presentation, he stated the need for harmonization of the guideline. So we think that it's important today to develop more approaches, to harmonize approaches and strategy for mainstreaming at national and regional and international level this process. Also, there's a need to involve all stakeholders in building more and scaling up evergreen agriculture. More example exist in somewhere. When I take the example of Niger, so the work done by the support of IFAD, by the support of IFF, by the support of ICRAF. So we need to go together and build together tools for scaling up this evergreen agriculture. Finally, we think that the intensification of farming system must go in line with evergreen agriculture. Thank you very much.